Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. Glen's got a different background. That's because he is in Omaha, and he got to see a fantastic matchup last night. We're going to talk about that and more on today's episode. Hey, if you haven't already, hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you follow us if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and check us out at Go 24/7 on the message boards. Make sure you get that VIP subscription. I'm going to believe 50% off right now. We're still running this fantastic deal that people need to take advantage of. Baseball, football, recruiting, great staff, and we're getting closer to full strength, obviously, with me getting down to Louisiana. And Glenn, you left, and it just got really hot down here, like unbelievably hot. So I hope the weather out there is great, but it was probably even better with the fact that LSU with a big win last night. Paul Skenes, we're going to talk about a lot of different aspects of this game. Braden Jobert. Man, but first off, describe the atmosphere. What was it like your first time taking in an opportunity in Omaha and watching the Tigers?
Yeah, I mean it was pretty electric. I mean, I walked into the stadium and yeah, the field, and it was just you could see the anticipation of all this. And kind of as an aside here, I mean, I walked in, and what's the first thing I walk into? A weather delay, and that's kind of how things got started. I was walking the streets a little bit once I got into the area of where the stadium is, and talking with a couple people, but wanted to head up to the press box to start getting some work done. And is pretty much as I walked in, the first game between Stanford and Wake Forest went into a delay, and I kind of put it out there almost instantly, like, why mess with a good thing, right? I mean, LSU's been in weather delays the last 2 weeks of the postseason, and why not have another game affected by a lightning delay? So, was out there, had to sit through that for probably about an hour until they got started again, and then obviously delayed the start of the LSU game by about 45 minutes or so. But it was a really just amazing experience. I mean, fans started packing in about 15, 20 minutes before first pitch, and you could definitely feel kind of the energy there. I think they said they had about 25,000 people in the stands for the LSU Tennessee
Wow.
game. That was the highest in terms of attendance game of the first 2 days. So that was a really cool kind of little side note there. But then, yeah, we'll get into the game, but just the atmosphere itself was pretty electric. I mean, you had there was a good number of orange, good amount of orange that I saw out there, and certainly LSU and their fan base took over most of the third base dugout side of the field, and Tennessee was kind of on the first base side of things. But yeah, I mean, it was everything you kind of hope for in terms of just atmosphere, environment, and then obviously the play itself was pretty spectacular, and I think continued what was a pretty amazing first 2 days of play. I mean, they were all the first three games were between one run games. LSU's game really kind of came down to the final few innings there, and yeah, it was just a really great atmosphere and environment, and a great way to kick off what could be a pretty long elongated stay here.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned the most well-attended game. I was checking ticket prices. It was by far the highest ticket price of the weekend as well, and already the game that we're going to maybe dabble a little bit towards into the beginning of this pod or the end of this podcast against Wake Forest is the highest ticket price. Doesn't surprise you the way Wake Forest has played in LSU all season long. But Glenn, let's get down to it right here. I mean, we've talked about this almost every single time we mention LSU baseball, and it's becoming synonymous with that here in 2023. But the effort, the ability, and the performance of Paul Skenes, who, if he wasn't already known from people outside the SEC, if the casual college baseball observer or the casual sports observer that was flipping through channels, they got to witness another performance, another feat that is just another notch in the cap of the right-hander in Paul Skenes.
Yeah, I mean, he was as dominant, that really through the first 7 innings that you could ask for. I mean, this 7 innings there really shut Tennessee down. I think allowed maybe 4 hits through those 7 innings and 5 total base runners. Struck out 12. He struck out 7 of the first 8 guys, and for LSU fans know that that 202 strikeout record for Ben McDonald is well within reach with Skenes, and we thought he might go ahead and break it a little bit prematurely here and get it in the first game in Omaha because of how dominant he looked in the first 3 or 4 innings in particular, where he sat down practically everybody and didn't really allow a whole lot of Tennessee movement. But what really stood out to me, obviously the fastball 101, 102 pretty consistently for the first 5 or 6 innings or so. The slider was not used as much. That's kind of been his knockout pitch, is the fastball slider combo. It was actually the changeup that worked a lot, worked really well for him in this game. You got a bunch of Tennessee hitters chasing it. Kind of the game plan going in, I think, for Tennessee was to try to be really aggressive with the fastball. And so when you're really aggressive with the fastball, if you throw that off-speed pitch, you're going to be way out in front of it. And so, I think the Skenes and LSU were able to notice that pretty early on into the outing, and it led to a pretty dominant performance, 7 2/3, 12 strikeouts. Gives up the 2 runs in the 7th inning. But I mean, he was at like 120 pitches at that point. So things are going to start to go a little bit differently once you get into that range of your outing. So it was good for Johnson to kind of get him out of the game right then and there. And look, you set yourself up now here in the winners bracket, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just being in that side of the bracket is really, really important here. Obviously, you got a really important game against Wake Forest coming up here on Monday. But winning this first game and really these first 2 games, it opens up a lot of opportunities for you to really feel good about advancing here into that championship round. So good start. You still got a couple more to go. But man, Skenes, more so than anything, just got you off on the right start, got all those first game jitters out of the way for LSU. And I think now those guys can really settle in and try to make a run at this thing.
Let's stay on the pitching here just for a second, because obviously there was a lot of back and forth on our boards on social media about when Gavin Guidry enters the game. And look, we had a chance to talk to him on Tuesday, and this is a kid that earned the right to be in the spot, Glenn. I don't think maybe you think any differently. I know I don't think any differently of that. He earned the right to be in the spot. He just hung a breaking ball to a really good hitter, and it's just one of those things. So what do you think that does for his confidence, and what did you think of kind of the bullpen's effort, especially Riley Cooper there at the end, to kind of navigate what did become a testy situation there in the last inning and a half?
Yeah, I think Guidry has shown you way more good than bad over the last month to really be confident that he can be a late game closer for you. It was one pitch. I mean, literally they threw him out there. He mislocated on the one pitch and then was right out. So I think it was you could probably just chalk that up to just a mistake for the freshman. And I got the chance to talk with Gavin a little bit earlier this week as well. His focus and his mentality is just so strong for a freshman that I don't think something like that's going to phase him in the slightest. I mean, I saw him walking, out of the, the media was allowed to kind of go in the locker room after the game. And so we were hanging out there outside of the locker room, and I saw him walking in, and I mean, he was just strutting in. I mean, he was confident. He was shaking hands, fist bumping guys, and really taking all of it in. And so, I think that's just another sign there that he's going to be able to bounce back from this, and they're gonna need him in some situation here, I think, over the next couple games. But Riley Cooper was a standout for sure. I mean, getting those last 4 outs when Tennessee was starting to make things a little bit interesting, he kind of slammed the door. He didn't really make it a dramatic finish the way that a lot of those previous 3 games had gone. He did a really nice job of mixing his pitches well. He's kind of got that rubber arm from the standpoint that he can throw really 3 or 4 pitches for strikes and locate them well. And his velocity has ticked up really the last several weeks as well to 91, 92 with the fastball. And he has a great curveball and a nice off-speed changeup as well. So he did a really nice job getting those final 4 outs. And he was a guy that Jay Johnson talked about leading into this tournament, that he's the only guy that has pitched in this environment before. He's the only one that's really pitched in Omaha, knows what it's like. And you could see that experience kind of shine through there for him in those late game moments. And just did a really nice job. And I think he's going to be another arm that you really have to turn around quickly and expect to be a part of the rotation here in the next couple days.
And you also have to believe, too, that these guys are going to Jay Johnson, a guy like Cooper, especially who pitched. I mean, I don't know, what the fatigue level of his arm is. You mentioned he's got the rubber arm as a guy that can go out there and throw multiple outings in a week, it feels like. But they're all saying, hey, Coach, if you need me, let's go. I'm ready to go. And I think that's what's exciting about this staff as well. Let's flip it over to the offensive side of things. Glenn, I was watching the game. I mentioned the hot weather, the storm we had that knocked my power out. I was able to come back into it and watching the game, and it was up to a point where LSU was 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. They're able to break through. Offensively, if you just looked at the box score and you didn't watch the game, you can see that Braden Jobert played a huge part of it. Glenn, he arguably left the easiest thing he needed for the cycle in the single on the table. He got the triple, the double, and then the home run, which was a no-doubt shot. And really, for me, Glenn, when LSU allowed the 2-run homer and obviously allowed the run, it was 5-3, to answer back with Jobert's homer, that might not have been a bigger answer in the entire game. Talk about his efforts and then just the offense as a whole, just being tough outs. Gavin Dugas, the homer early in the game to set the tone.
Yeah, that was the biggest swing of the night, in my opinion, the Jobert home run. I mean, to like you said, Tennessee was making it a game there at the end in that 8th inning, and LSU really responded nicely to that run. They score 3 runs there in the bottom of the 8th. LSU responds with they score 3 runs, at the top of the 8th, and then LSU responds with the solo homer from Jobert there in the bottom of the 8th. And I know it's just 1 run, but in that setting, in that environment, 3 feels so much better than 2. I mean, 2, you're really looking at potential just getting 1 guy on base, and then 1 swing can really just change things from there. So that was a huge swing. I thought Jobert was certainly the MVP of the offense for the night. I thought Trey Morgan did a really nice job as well. I think if you're looking just kind of in a vacuum of this postseason so far, there hasn't been a more valuable player for LSU than Trey Morgan. He really delivered for you in the super regional round, gave you 2 RBI swings, sac flies, and just getting the ball in play to score 2 runs there last night. I thought, Dylan Cruz had a nice couple of at-bats, goes 2 for 5 on the night with a run scored. So, yeah, I think it was just a really collective effort. Josh Pearson got on base a couple times and was able to score a run. I really liked kind of I don't want to say patience, because it really wasn't patience, but it was just they got hits at the right time. They moved the offense well really throughout the game. They had several innings there where they had guys on base and they just weren't able to get anything going. But the way that they were contacting the ball, the way that they were driving it into the outfield, it just made you believe that they were going to be able to consistently apply pressure to the Tennessee pitching staff. And whether it was Lindsey or whoever it was they were throwing last night, I think it was just a really positive night overall. Starting with the Dugas swing there to really get things started. Just really liked what LSU was able to do offensively, even though it wasn't as flashy at times. Certainly you had the big swings there from Jobert and Dugas, but the fact that they were just consistently able to get guys on, run up pitch counts, get deep into pitch counts as well, and just kind of be present throughout the entire game. There really wasn't a game where LSU, or an inning where LSU went 3 up, 3 down, and it really wasn't much of a competition. They put pressure on Tennessee throughout the night, and I think that's kind of what helped them open the game up there at the end.
One things that fans may not, say the wow factor, like you mentioned, it wasn't flashy. But I go back to Trey Morgan's at bat, the ball that he stung to center field for the sacrifice fly that brought home Dylan Cruz. It was a great at bat. He battled, and I mean, Glenn, 5 feet to the left, 5 feet to the right. We're talking about multiple runs coming home and an extra base hit for Trey Morgan, and he was a guy that definitely stood out in the super regional. Continued to carry that over. The third aspect of this, and you mentioned this in an article talking about how LSU's playing really well. I know Jordan Thompson had a couple of plays there at the end that you felt like, hey, we would have liked to have that better. But, man, he had the one play up the middle. And then Morgan's stretch that, I don't know if you saw from your vantage point if they had a TV in the press room with the press box,
Tap
but
dance.
tap dance. I mean, holy cow! And then Trey Morgan is saying, and the camera picks up. He goes, "I think I pushed off." He didn't even think that he kept his foot on the bag. Defensively, offensively, and then obviously on the mound. I wanted you to have the opportunity to kind of elaborate on that article that you wrote. Of you feel like this is a perfect mix, and we saw obviously last night LSU's playing good ball all in the right areas.
I think they found the right mix in the field. I think they found the right mix on the mound. They found 5 or 6 guys outside of Paul Skenes and Ty Floyd that I think they feel really comfortable with on the mound. At the plate, they've run the same order. I mean, the exact same order in all 6 games this year. And it's really worked out. I mean, whether it's Pearson in the 9 hole, Travinsky and Beloso kind of backing each other up in that 4-5 spot. Cruz leading off. I mean, you're getting big hits now from Joe Bear and from Jordan Thompson. It just feels like 1 through 9, those guys are really clicking on all cylinders. But really, the defense for me, I think, has been the standout in the postseason, just because it was an area that LSU was kind of slowly not really figuring out towards the end of the
Mm-hmm.
season. They were kind of walking into some mistaken run errors throughout the end of this regular season, and even in the SEC tournament, there were a couple of blimps here and there. I think when Trey Morgan moved back to first base full time, it really just allowed LSU to kind of settle in. Their infield has played much better. Josh Pearson out in left field made a couple of huge catches to kind of preserve Paul Skenes' outing there last night. I thought he did this one diving catch that was really tough to track, and Johnson even mentioned it after the game that left field at that 6 p.m. game is really hard
Yeah.
to see just because of the shadows and the way the sun's hitting on the stadium. So really nice job by Josh there to really bring you, I think, some good clutch outs there in the outfield. And I think the infield play has been just brimming with confidence, and momentum here the last couple of weeks. I mean, Thompson's play last weekend, Morgan and his ability to kind of save outs and stretch and just be really, really ambidextrous there at first base has really allowed LSU, I think, to feel confident in what they're doing. They're shifting Dugas as well. The Dugas Thompson shift was a really smart way to kind of handle the middle infield here, and even Dugas made some really nice plays there on that shift. I mean, he turned a couple double plays in the last couple weeks. He's been at the right place at the right time on some line drives. So yeah, they're all making the routine plays right now, which is something that I don't think you could have said 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. And I think it's, it kind of just points to a team that's playing its most complimentary baseball at the right time of year.
Well, when a team, Glenn, plays a really good team that just seems to be destined, we often call it you just run into a buzzsaw. And I think that Wake Forest fans feel kind of weird about it. They could be the buzzsaw or they could see LSU be the buzzsaw. These are two programs that are really, really good at what they do. That primetime matchup is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Glenn, kind of some of your early thoughts on this matchup, this game. And, I mean, you don't want to say do or die, but this is a pivotal game, like you talked about, to really take control of your own destiny to get to that championship series.
Yeah, I spent most of the morning doing some research on Wake Forest. So, just early thoughts here. I really think that what you're going to probably see from LSU tomorrow is Ty Floyd and Thatcher Hurd on the mound, and that's been kind of the 1-2 punch there. Whether it's Floyd getting into 3 or 4 innings, 5 innings, and then Hurd kind of taking you the rest of the way. I think that's probably the ideal scenario LSU would like to run into tomorrow. And then from the Wake Forest perspective, look, this pitching staff is highly heralded as one of the best, if not the best in the country. LSU just faced a staff like that in Tennessee in terms of team ERA. Wake Forest is number 1 and Tennessee is number 2. But Wake Forest has a pretty significant lead on Tennessee for number 1, 2.84 ERA for the staff. I think what you're looking at most likely tomorrow is Josh Hartle, the lefty. He got a 2.8 ERA, and look, LSU has been a lot better at it recently, but early in the year they were really struggling with lefty throwers, and so I think it makes sense for Wake Forest to throw Hartle out there, and he's certainly one of your better starting options. Considering the fact that they just threw their ace in the Stanford game, but that pitching staff, man, they're tough. I mean, they've got, I would say, 5 or 6 different arms here that can really throw a wrinkle into your plans offensively, and a couple of those guys are still going to be available. I would say Cole Rowland and Michael Massey are probably the two names to really look out for out of the bullpen for Wake Forest. I think those guys, they didn't pitch in the game on Sunday or on Saturday, and I think it's probably setting up to be that kind of game for those two guys. To back up Hartle should things go awry. But this is going to be a battle of heavyweights. I mean, I think how Wake Forest's pitching staff goes head to head with LSU's offense, it really seems to be playing at a very, very high level right now. That's going to be the big story, I think, leading up to this game, and I think it's going to be the story that really signifies which of these teams continues to advance in the winners bracket and which one's going to have to play on Tuesday and Wednesday and try to advance into the championship round the hard way. So, really going to be a fun matchup. I think it's probably one of the more highly anticipated matchups of the season. It really feels like it's one that's been in the making for a while. Obviously, with LSU carrying the number 1 spot for about 12 weeks or so to start the year, and then Wake Forest carrying that baton and not really relinquishing control over the last month and a half, 2 months or so of the season. I think we're in for some really stellar play, and I know that I can't wait to get a chance to watch those two teams go at it on Monday night.
Glen's going to have a front row seat, and you need to make sure you're following him. You see him right there at GlenWest21 on Twitter. Make sure you're following to make sure that you see all the great content we've got coming on. And listen, if you want, out of bounds content, off topic content, like Glen's foot room in the plane or Glen's amazing ride throughout Omaha, you need to make sure you're subscribed over at Go247. We've got a great thread talking about that as well as Glen continues to explore and enjoy Omaha. Glen, I know you're excited to get to the game, obviously on Monday. Wake Forest is going to be a great challenge for LSU. I think, like you said, this is one that has been building up, especially what you mentioned, kind of the switch, the change at the top of the rankings is going to be a lot of fun to watch. But hey, we appreciate you so much for tuning in, and Glen joining us all the way from Omaha, Nebraska as well. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share with your friends. And if you're listening on podcast, all you got to do is follow the podcast wherever you get it, Spotify, Apple, or anywhere else. We'll see you on the forums. We'll see you in the comments. This has been another episode of the Go 24/7 podcast.